Pushpin disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created purely for emotional storytelling purposes. Names, characters, and situations are entirely fictional and do not represent any real individuals or actual events. The narrative explores sensitive themes including regret, heartbreak, and emotional vulnerability. Reader discretion is advised. It was almost midnight when Eliza's phone buzzed. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the gentle rustling of her bedsheet as she turned over to check the screen. Her breath caught in her throat the second she saw the name. Aaron. Her thumb hovered over the screen, frozen. She hadn't heard from him in almost 2 years, not since he packed his bags, left without a real goodbye, and moved to another state to figure himself out. She had spent months trying to heal from that heartbreak, piecing herself back together, one lonely day at a time. And now here he was, sending her a message at 11:47 p.m. Hey Eliza. I know it's late. I'm in town, just for tonight. Can we talk? Her heart pounded, a war already beginning in her mind. She stared at the message, reading it again and again. Why now? Why tonight? Why her? Every part of her screamed to ignore it, to block him, to remember the way he made her feel like a second choice. But curiosity was louder, and the part of her heart that still remembered the feel of his arms, his voice, his smile, it was louder too. She sat up, her hands trembling slightly as she typed, "Where are you?" His reply came instantly. A small, dim bar downtown where they used to go during their happier days. It was only a few blocks away. It almost felt planned, too familiar to be random. Eliza changed out of her pajamas and into a simple black sweater and jeans. She barely wore makeup, just a touch of lip gloss and mascara. She wasn't going to impress him. Or at least that's what she told herself. The streets were mostly empty as she walked, her mind tangled with questions she couldn't answer. What did he want to say? Why now, after all this time? When she finally entered the bar, the soft hum of music and clinking glasses surrounded her. And there he was in the corner booth, exactly where they used to sit. Same warm smile. Same tired eyes. Except now, they looked older. A little sadder. A little more real. Eliza, he said softly, standing up. Her lips parted, but no words came. It was surreal. I didn't think you'd actually come, he added, almost sheepish. I didn't think I would either, she admitted. He smiled faintly, motioning for her to sit. She did. And just like that, the past 2 years melted away in the space between them. But something told her, this night would change everything. Eliza sat across from Aaron, her hands folded tightly in her lap beneath the table. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was heavy. Like it carried every unsaid word from the past 2 years. She glanced around the bar, noting how little had changed. Same dim lighting, same dusty jukebox in the corner playing 90s love songs. Even the bartender gave her a familiar nod. Aaron cleared his throat. You look exactly the same. Eliza raised an eyebrow. Is that a compliment? He chuckled. It is. You were always beautiful. She looked away, her cheeks warming despite herself. His voice still had that calming effect on her. And that made her nervous. They began talking slowly at first. A few safe questions. How's work? Still in the same apartment? How's your sister? But as the minutes passed and the drinks settled in, the emotional barriers started to slip. Aaron talked about how things hadn't gone as planned after he moved. The job wasn't what he expected. The city felt cold. He admitted he had tried to move on with someone else, but it didn't last. I thought I wanted freedom, he said, stirring the ice in his glass. But all I found was emptiness. Eliza listened, arms folded, unsure if she should feel sorry for him or angry that he was only realizing this now. Still, a part of her hurt for him. Because even after all the damage, she still understood his heart. She shared her own story, how she picked up freelance work, went to therapy, and slowly built a life without him. It wasn't easy, she said. You broke me, Aaron. His face fell, genuinely remorseful. I know. And I've hated myself for it more times than I can count. Then came the laughter, soft at first, then louder as the alcohol made their pain feel temporarily lighter. They remembered the dumb inside jokes, their disastrous attempt to cook on Valentine's Day, the time they danced in the rain outside this very bar. Those memories came alive, wrapping around them like a warm blanket. But underneath the laughter was something else, nostalgia. Dangerous, beautiful nostalgia that made her forget why they had ended. It made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was still something left. "You ever think about what we had?" he asked gently. She looked into his eyes, heart pounding. Too often. Their hands brushed accidentally on the table, and neither of them pulled away. The bar faded into background noise. It felt like they were the only two people left in the world. In that moment, it didn't matter what had gone wrong. All that mattered was what still felt right. But deep down, Eliza knew nostalgia had teeth. It could look like comfort and taste like hope, but it often led to pain. Still, as the night grew darker, she wasn't ready to walk away, not yet. The clock above the bar ticked past 1 a.m., but Eliza wasn't watching it. Time had lost its meaning somewhere between their third drink and the moment Aaron gently placed his hand over hers. The buzz of alcohol mixed with emotions too long buried, and she could feel her guard slowly dissolving. "I know I don't deserve this," Aaron whispered, his voice low and uncertain. "But just for tonight, can we forget the world? Just be us again?" Eliza stared at him, heart racing. Part of her screamed no. Part of her wanted to throw her drink in his face and remind him of all the nights she cried alone, waiting for a message that never came. But then there was the other part, the fragile, aching part, that missed him more than she ever admitted, even to herself. "What do you mean, just tonight?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He hesitated. "I leave in the morning. Early. Flight's at 9. I didn't plan any of this. I saw your name in my contacts and I don't know. I needed to see you." Her chest tightened. "So you came back to stir all this up, then disappear again?" "No," he said quickly. This wasn't supposed to happen. But now that I'm here with you, it feels like the first time I've been able to breathe in months." Eliza looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't the same man who had walked away. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there before, a heaviness in his expression. But his eyes, the ones she used to fall into like a sea, still looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered. She stood up without a word. Aaron's expression turned cautious. "Eliza, let's get out of here," she said softly. They walked through the quiet streets, side by side, neither speaking. Her apartment was only a few blocks away. With every step, she fought the voice in her head warning her that this was a mistake. But the pull between them was magnetic, impossible to resist. When they reached her door, she paused. Her hand trembled as she unlocked it. "Are you sure?" Aaron asked, voice barely a whisper. "No," she replied truthfully. "But I don't want to wonder what if anymore." Inside, everything happened slowly, yet it felt like a blur. They moved with hesitation at first, careful, almost afraid, but soon, old rhythms returned. Touch became memory. Kisses turned into confessions. It wasn't lust. It was something far more dangerous, familiar love dressed as closure. In the early hours of the morning, Eliza lay in bed, her head on Aaron's chest. He traced lazy circles on her shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for this." She closed her eyes. A single tear slid down her cheek. Because deep down, she already knew this wasn't healing. This was reopening a wound. The morning sunlight crept through the half-drawn curtains, casting soft golden stripes across the room. Eliza stirred, her mind foggy and her body warm beneath the covers. For a brief moment, she forgot where she was, or more importantly, who had been lying beside her just hours ago. Then her eyes opened to the empty side of the bed. Aaron was gone. Her chest tightened immediately, a cold panic replacing the warmth of the sheets. She sat up quickly, the tangled blanket slipping down her bare skin. The room was silent. No footsteps. No shower running. No coffee brewing. Just silence. His shirt was gone from the floor. So were his shoes. His coat. His phone charger. Everything. She got up, her legs unsteady as she walked to the small table near the door. No note. No message. Not even a text. Her phone was quiet. She refreshed her inbox once. Twice. Still nothing. It was like he had never been there at all. The events of the night before came crashing down like a tidal wave. His words. His touch. The way he looked at her like she was the only one who ever mattered. And now, the cruel reality that it had all been temporary. A moment for him. A lifetime for her. She slumped back onto the edge of the bed, numb. What had she been thinking? That maybe this night meant something more to him? That maybe he would change his flight? That he would wake her with a kiss and say, "Let's try again"? Eliza hated how naive she had been. Hated the way she had let her emotions cloud her judgment. Hated how one night, just one reckless, aching night, had undone all the strength it had taken her 2 years to build. Tears pricked her eyes, but she wiped them away before they fell. No, she wouldn't cry for him again. She got up, showered in silence, and dressed without looking in the mirror. Her reflection would only show regret. Every part of her felt hollow, like she had given something away that she couldn't take back. Not her body, her hope. She picked up her phone and typed a message. Was that really all it meant to you? She hovered over the send button, thumb trembling. Then slowly, she pressed delete. What was the point? Aaron was gone. No goodbye. No explanation. No closure. He had said it was just one night. And he meant it. But for Eliza, it was so much more. It was the night she let her guard down. The night she wanted to believe in second chances. The night she made the worst kind of mistake, the kind that doesn't just hurt, it lingers. And as the hours passed and silence continued to mock her, one thing became painfully clear. Regret had just begun. 3 weeks passed. Eliza tried to move on, but the morning after Aaron left had marked a shift she couldn't explain. She buried herself in work, ignored calls from friends, and smiled politely at questions she didn't want to answer. Outwardly, everything seemed normal. But inside, something felt off. It started with fatigue. Then nausea. Her appetite came and went like a flicker of wind. At first, she chalked it up to stress, maybe a stomach bug. But the symptoms lingered. Each day, her body seemed to whisper something her mind didn't want to hear. Then came the missed period. Eliza sat alone in her bathroom, hands shaking as she stared at the pregnancy test box. The silence of her apartment pressed down on her. She had never bought one before. Never thought she'd need to. Certainly not now. Not after just one night. She read the instructions twice before taking the test. The minutes that followed felt like hours. Her mind played every possibility, every scenario, but one word kept cutting through all the noise. No. 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 But then it appeared. 2 lines. Positive. Eliza blinked in disbelief. Her stomach turned cold. The stick dropped from her hand and hit the edge of the sink. She sat on the floor, staring at nothing. It didn't feel real. It couldn't be real. She had been careful, hadn't she? Aaron's voice echoed in her head, just one night. She laughed bitterly through the tears. One night. That was all it had taken to derail everything. One reckless decision. One spark of old love. Now, here she was, facing the biggest consequence of her life, and she was completely alone. She thought about texting him. Tried to remember the number, even though it had been deleted. She searched old emails, old messages, anything. But everything came up empty. His social media accounts were gone. No trail. No contact. It was like he had disappeared into thin air. Her hand trembled as she placed it over her stomach. She wasn't even sure what she was feeling, fear, anger, confusion, or something deeper. A strange sense of responsibility began to settle in. She wasn't ready to be a mother. She wasn't ready for this life. But ready or not, something inside her had begun. A life. Over the next few days, she went through the motions of scheduling doctor visits, buying vitamins, researching what to expect. It all felt mechanical. Surreal. Like she was watching someone else's story. At night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, one question burning in her heart. Would he have stayed if he knew? But that was the cruelest part. He never gave her the chance to find out. The hardest part wasn't the physical changes. It wasn't the nausea or the fatigue or the random cravings that began in the middle of the night. It was the silence. The loneliness. The secret that grew heavier with each passing day. Eliza hadn't told a soul. She didn't know how. Her friends would ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. Her family, especially her mother, would be disappointed. There would be shame, judgments, whispers behind her back. She slept with her ex? He left the next morning? What was she thinking? She had already asked herself those questions 1,000 times. So she kept it all inside. During the day, she smiled through meetings, responded to emails, and forced herself to function like nothing had changed. But at night, when the world was quiet, she would curl up in bed and place her hand over her stomach, the only connection she had to something that both terrified and grounded her. She downloaded pregnancy apps, read articles, watched videos on what to expect during the first trimester. But it all felt distant, clinical, like a life she was studying, not living. She was doing it alone, and every moment reminded her of the man who should have been there but wasn't. She often found herself scrolling through her old photos, stopping on the ones where Aaron held her hand or kissed her cheek. Photos she had once deleted in anger, now restored in quiet desperation. She didn't miss the relationship. She missed the idea of not doing this alone. One evening, after a particularly long day, Eliza opened a blank journal and began to write. Dear Aaron, you're going to be a father. I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know where you are. But I need to say this anyway. She poured everything into those pages, her fear, her guilt, her rage, her heartbreak. She wrote about the night they shared, how he made her feel, how she had allowed herself to believe, even for a moment, that it meant something. And now, the weight of that night was hers to carry, alone. The letter stretched across pages, each word both a wound and a release. She didn't write to get him back. She didn't write in hope that he'd return. She wrote because it was the only way to survive the silence. When she finished, she folded the letter and placed it in a drawer beside her bed. No name on it. No stamp. Just a memory sealed in paper. Days turned into weeks. The secret inside her grew, and with it, a strange new strength. She wasn't ready. She was terrified. But slowly, she was learning that love isn't always loud or romantic. Sometimes it's quiet. It's survival. It's the decision to wake up each day and keep going, even when no one else is there to see you try. Eliza sat by the window, wrapped in a soft gray cardigan, a mug of herbal tea in one hand and her journal resting on her lap. Outside, spring had begun to bloom, gentle winds, early blossoms, life awakening again. But inside her heart, there was still winter. The pregnancy was nearing 4 months now. The doctor said everything looked healthy. Strong heartbeat. Good growth. The baby was real. Tangible. A quiet flutter now and then reminded her that someone was sharing her body, depending on her. Yet, despite all the growth, one thing remained unchanged. Aaron was still gone. No message. No call. No explanation. His silence was louder than anything he'd ever said. She knew it was time to let go, but a piece of her still held on, not to him, but to the hope that he might one day care enough to look back. That night, she opened her drawer and pulled out the letter she had written weeks earlier. She unfolded it slowly, the paper creased and soft from being touched too many times. Her eyes scanned the words, now familiar and distant. Then, she picked up her pen. She started a second letter. Dear Aaron, this is the last time I'll write to you. I don't know if you deserve to know about her. Yes, it's a girl, but I want you to know what your absence has taught me. I learned that love, the kind I had for you, wasn't enough. I confused comfort with connection. I mistook our memories for a future. But you took something from me that night, not just my trust, not just my hope. You took away the version of me that believed you could change. And yet, in the ruins you left behind, something new began to grow. Our daughter. She's the most unexpected part of my life, and I already love her more than I ever loved you. Because she's innocent. Because she didn't choose to leave. She chose to stay. I'll raise her with strength, with love, and with honesty. But she will never be your burden to carry. You gave me one night. She will give me a lifetime. Goodbye, Aaron. For real this time. She signed it with a trembling hand, not because she was unsure, but because it was the first time she truly felt herself letting go. Then, calmly and without drama, she took the 2 letters, folded them together, and placed them in a small metal tin. She walked to the fireplace, lit a single match, and dropped the letters into the flames. They curled, smoked, and turned to ash. And with that, Aaron's ghost was gone. The tears that fell afterward were soft and silent. They weren't for him, they were for her. For the girl who had hoped too long, believed too hard, and finally learned to release. Eliza sat in the stillness that followed and whispered to the tiny life inside her, "It's just us now." And that's enough. Years had passed. The pain that once ruled Eliza's every breath had faded into something softer, something survivable. Time, it turned out, did not erase wounds, it only taught her how to live around them. The girl who had once cried silently into her pillow, lost and ashamed, had become a woman who stood tall. And beside her, clinging to her hand with a burst of laughter, was a little girl named Lily. Lily had her eyes, curious, wide, and warm. But sometimes, Eliza would see something in her daughter's expression that reminded her of Aaron, the tilt of her head when she was confused, the dimple that appeared when she smiled too hard. It was a bittersweet reminder that some ties never truly break. But Eliza didn't hide from those moments. She didn't let them define her. Instead, she leaned into the truth that she had turned one night of regret into a life of purpose. She worked 2 jobs in the beginning, slept in short bursts between feedings, and cried quietly during late-night diaper changes. But she never stopped. For every tired day and every uncertain moment, she had a reason to keep going. Lily became her anchor, her light, and strangely, her redemption. She often thought about Aaron, but never with longing. More like a memory you visit briefly, then walk away from. She never tried to find him again. Maybe he had changed. Maybe he hadn't. But he had made a choice, and so had she. And her choice had been to stay, to fight, to grow. There were days Eliza still felt regret, not for Lily, never for Lily, but for the girl she had been that night. The one who said yes when everything in her heart whispered no. The one who hoped he'd stay. The one who let love blind her to the cost. But in the same breath, she forgave that girl too. Because that girl hadn't known she would survive. Hadn't known she was capable of becoming this strong. She had to fall apart to rebuild something new. One sunny afternoon, Eliza and Lily sat on a bench in the park, sharing a melting ice cream. Lily giggled as she smeared chocolate on her nose. Eliza leaned in, wiped it gently, and smiled. "Mommy," Lily asked suddenly, "where's my daddy?" Eliza paused. It was a question she knew would come eventually. And this time, she didn't feel the sting she once feared. "Your daddy was someone I loved a long time ago," she said gently. "But sometimes, people aren't meant to stay in our lives. And that's okay. Because I have you. And you have me. And that's the most beautiful kind of family." Lily nodded thoughtfully, then went back to her ice cream. Eliza looked up at the sky, bright, open, endless. For the first time in years, she felt peace not in forgetting the past, but in understanding it. Aaron had given her one night. But from that night, she had built a life. 68.